Welcome once again to the Knowing That Brings Victory. The last few weeks we've looked at knowing God, we've looked at knowing self, and now we're going to look at knowing our potentials, knowing what we carry inside of us. Many a times people are of good intention, people are called, people want to really serve, but then they are underutilized because they have not uncovered the gifting that has been placed inside of them, right? Potential is not necessarily what you're doing. Potential is actually uncovering what you have inside of you. It is actually who you are becoming on the journey of your success, right? It is hidden, not absent, right? It comes out more often when it's being utilized, right? And it multiplies when it is being steward. The Bible says in Genesis 1:28, it said, "Be fruitful and multiply." And when you look at that word, it means that God's original instruction assumes that something already exists inside of us. We just need to multiply it. We need to be fruitful about it, right? He has put eternity in our heart. It means God deposited ability, God has deposited grace inside of us. God has deposited ideas and burdens. These are proofs of our divine investment in our inner convictions. But it takes the one that has really, really sit into ourselves to uncover these things, to be able to identify this potential, right? Everyone received something. Distribution was according to capacity, and accountability has always been universal. But the servant with one talent, if you remember, you know, had it and he hid it. Why? Because he did not utilize it. And what had happened? It was taken away from him. When it comes to potential, I always equate it to muscle atrophy. And what do I mean by muscle atrophy? It just basically means when you have when you don't utilize your muscles, maybe you don't really walk all the time, maybe you don't do a lot of movements. What you tend to see happen with your muscles is that they begin to waste, they begin to shrink, right? That is what happened with potentials. When you don't utilize your potentials, when you don't put them to work, when you don't, stretch them and refine them, you find it wasting and becoming less active inside of you, right? And a lot of times, what we see happen, why people majorly don't really, activate or utilize or maximize their potential, is actually sometimes fear. Fear, imposter syndrome, fear of being judged, fear of, not being taken seriously, or fear of being laughed at, or fear of even failing at what you do, makes people don't want to activate the potential that they have inside of them. Sometimes comparison, a lot of times you begin to compare yourself with people that are possibly doing the same thing you're doing, or peradventure have gone ahead of you, and you're like, oh God, this person has gone really far in this success journey. Look at where I am. No, you are in your own lane. What you need to do is to focus on how you will steward the gifting inside of you, because the more you utilize it, the more it empowers you to believe so much in yourself, right? Another thing is laziness and procrastination, lack of self-discipline. People don't discipline themselves to really put the work to work, to identify exactly what it is that God has given to them and to put it to work, to utilize it. Potential unused is actually a potential that can be abused, right? The moment you don't use your potential, it becomes it will be abused, right? And unused potential is abused, yeah, because what you don't have value for, or you don't know the value it carries, abuse obviously is inevitable. That's what we say, right? They say when a purpose of a thing is not identified, abuse is inevitable. When you don't understand what you carry inside of you, you underutilize yourself, you underrate yourself, you self-sabotage yourself, and you sabotage yourself a lot. And that is one thing that's not having good understanding of what you carry inside of you can really result into, right? Now let's look at some of the potentials that we may have in terms of the types. We have what we call the spiritual potentials, right? The spiritual potentials are a thing of, stewarding prayer, stewarding worship, stewarding the word of God, studying and meditation. And you see, one thing about this kind of spiritual potentials that I've come to realize is that most of it are really some sort of there's a level of personality traits that equates to how you function in all these different spiritual potentials, right? So what do I mean by that? What I mean is when you see someone who is more reflective in nature, in terms of personality, what you tend to see is that they steward more of the worship kind of potentials. You see them going into the place of worship all the time. You see them seeking the face of God. You see them drawing close to God. You see them just singing songs that's kind of like looks like a love song to God because of their reflective nature, right? But when you see someone who is very outspoken, someone with an extrovert in nature and in personality, look at that kind of person very well. What you realize is that that person still want more often the fellowship of prayer. Because they talk, they see themselves praying a lot. They see themselves, doing all sort of, prayer activities, speaking in tongues for long hours, and the rest of them. Have you noticed that? That's something I discovered, and I like, wow. So even our personality, our unique wiring, has everything to say with everything we do about life. Yeah. Another kind of potentials that we have is natural talent. Natural talent potentials, yeah, we're talking about things like creativity, organization, communications, and these are things that are naturally can be steward if really really put to work or put to training, right? If you engage yourself with some sort of discipline or disciplinary structures, you find yourself being able to steward this and multiply it and even refine it for better use, right? We also have things like learned potentials, and learned potentials has to do with maybe going for certification, maybe going for training, going for workshop, you know equipping yourself in your area of expertise, getting learned, getting, certifications and the rest of them. And then sometimes you also have what we call the experimental potential. Experimental potentials are those kind of potentials that come as a result of what you've experienced, as a result of what you've gone through, as a result of maybe pain, as a result of, maybe some sort of process, right? As a result of maybe some sort of exposure in the past. They become a potential that you can steward. An example that I would think of is, for instance, maybe because of the fact that one has gone through a season of loss, you have now built some level of potentials where you begin to see life from a new lens, right? So you no longer take things to heart, and you are using that as a potential of what I would say maybe being patient, with life, with goals, with desires, because you've seen that life is so fickle, right? As a result of the loss of maybe someone that you experience, you tend to still what and see yourself to say, what, I do not have much time on earth as well, because what has happened to my loved one can actually happen to me. And it's kind of like just put you on a course correction where you begin to realize that, okay, there isn't time for me to do anyhow and linger and waste the resources that God has given to me. It's time for me to really identify that. It's time for me to really put it to work. It's time for me to really undergo some level of training that can help me build and bring out the gifting of God inside of me. You see how pain can really help one to identify a purpose and begin to steward the potentials that bets that purpose in life, right? Why do many people not maximize their potential? Like I said before, now fear, comparison, definitely. A lot of times fear is one of the major ones. Fear of failure, fear of being laughed at, fear of not being taken serious, fear of not succeeding in whatever it is that you put yourself into, fear of being judged as well, and then we see things like comparison, right? A lot of times we are always comparing ourselves with others, forgetting that we are unique in our own kind of being and existence, and our comparison should be with our old self. Whatever you're competing with, whatever you're comparing yourself with, it should be with your version of you that no longer serve you and the ones that you want to become into the next that God has called you into. Sometimes you're waiting for permission. Sometimes we're waiting for people to say yes, well done, do it again. You post something today and you find that no, there was not much engagement, and the next minute you're telling yourself that I'm not posting again because I know that even if I post, it's not going to go viral, it's not going to be liked, it's not going to be commented on. Why in the first place are you posting? You're posting because you want people to learn, right? You're posting because you want people to get insights on some of the things that you want to share. So yours is to post it for people to actually engage with it, right? Whether they like it or not, you just have to keep doing what you're doing, because clarity comes in the place of doing, and confidence comes when you do more of what you've been called into. Sometimes lack of structure, when you don't have a consistent structure on how you want to really refine the potential inside of you, or even being able to uncover them and begin to nurture them and begin to activate them using different trainings and skills and learnings, you might not be able to put that together. And those are some of the things that actually make one not to really maximize their potential. Now, how do I discover my potential? How do I discover my potential? Number one, I would say observation. Yeah, observe yourself, sit into yourself, find out, do some sort of, how would I put it now, like a self auditing of yourself. Observe your patterns. Observe, what comes naturally to you. Observe the things that you enjoy doing, right? Observe them. Bring yourself into the consciousness of who you are every single day, of what makes you come alive exactly. Yeah. Another thing is pay attention to what is it that is bothering your heart, what it is that gives you some sort of discomfort. And when I mean discomfort, not that it causes you grief. Sometimes, for example, when I see children that are sick, or children that are not going to school, it gives me a lot of discomfort, right? It makes me it put me into that space where I really feel like, God, I want to help these people. Would you give me the resources? So there's a burden in my heart when I see people, the less privileged, that are not having good food, good housing, good life, or sometimes when I see widows that are struggling to look after their children, it just gives me some level of discomfort. And the next thing I begin to ask myself is, how do I help these people? How can I make their life better? So, what are those things that are giving you discomfort? What are those things that are like important to your heart? What are those things that you really want to prefer solutions to, even though you don't have the resources, but you just wish you had? That is potential calling at you. Number three, I want you to say, look at what people affirm about you. What are people saying to you? What are the things that people are constantly bringing to your way? What are the people are asking you to come and do for them? Most of the time, someone will say, "Oh, every now and then, people will tell me, oh, give me insight on how I can have a good home, or give me, give me informations on how to have a clean home. What are the things that I need to have a clean home? How do I maintain a good cleaning home?" You see, so you see, it's most time people are always there giving you clue to what they see that you carry inside of you. It is then you that need to write it down. Some people will say, "Well, every now and then people are coming to me for counseling. People are asking me to, to help them shed more light in this area." That is potential calling at you, right? That is potential calling at you. Some of the things also that you want to look at is, sometimes you want to look hard, at a situation where you see someone doing something and it gives you goosebumps. Like, you want to be like that person, you mirror that person a lot, you observe that person a lot. That person just makes the baby in your womb to leap. It is potential calling at you. So I want you to look at those things and begin to put them down into writing, so that you can place map around it to really then steward those potentials, right? So now I hope this has actually blessed you. I hope this has been of good, enlightenment and awakening to you, to begin to uncover the potential that you've carried inside of you and to go for gold. The truth is that when you lean more into what you carry naturally, you are able to maximize and produce even much more results in life. For instance, a fish would strive so effortlessly well when found in water, because that is natural to them, right? That is a natural inhabitant where their potential strive. So, what are those things that you carry inside of you that helps you and brings you into the place of victory in life? I want you to go and begin to uncover them. Now, let's make a quick declaration. So, we're going to say, Father, acknowledge the potentials that you place inside of me. I reject fear, laziness, comparison, competition. I receive grace to discover, develop, and deploy my gifting. My potential will serve your kingdom, and I will not bury what you've entrusted inside of me. God bless you, and I will see you again in the next episode. Bye for now.